Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the best podcast around, man, the Refined Savage Podcast. Let's do a little business. Let's talk about the Blind Dog Virtual Program. If you need a solid program, if you are into Highland Games or track and field and need a power program, we have that. If you don't have any equipment, or if you're locked in your home by some communist governor, we have a program for that. If you dig the kettlebell stuff, we have the program for that. If you want to do the same program they do at Blind Dog every day, we have a program for that. Not to mention high school foundations program, virtual personal training, and solid personalized programs for your needs. Give us a holler at blinddoggym@gmail.com or shoot us a DM at The Refined Savage on Instagram. Viking Coffee, the best stuff on earth. My favorite stuff. Hey, grocery store coffee is garbage. Stop buying that stuff. Check out Viking Coffee. It is just the best stuff. He's got all these different flavors. I guess you call them flavors. I'm not sure what you call them. But anyhow, Viking Coffee. Check them out. VikingCoffeeCode.com. Use the code VikingCoffee10 at checkout. Cerberus has everything you need if you are any kind of strength athlete. They are strength athletes making products for strength athletes. I can't tell you how important that is, guys. Really look at who you're buying shit from and make sure they're one of us. Ken at Cerberus Strength is one of us. Highland Games athlete, strongman competitor, powerlifter. He does it all, and he knows what you need. Check him out at cerberus-strength.us. Use the code REFINEDSAVAGE10 at checkout. Speaking of people who are in the mix, Warrior CBD, Nancy at Warrior CBD is a purple belt jiu-jitsu. She understands what we go through. Give them a holler. Their pain sticks are awesome. Their drops are awesome. Their CBD oil for dogs is fantastic, and cats. It's great stuff. Check it out, warriorcbdofficial.com. Use the code WARRIOR20 off at checkout. Speaking of more people who are in the mix and part of Serious Steel. Serious Steel is just chock full of people who are fabulous human beings, who are in strength sports, who understand strength athletes. If you need any kind of equipment, go to Serious Steel first. Check them out. Use the discount code. And if you can, order from them. Take care of the people who are taking care of us, right? SeriousSteel.com. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout. If you are not a hunter, and even if you are a hunter, because I get deer meat, my freezer right now is packed full of Stay Classy Meats. Stay Classy Meats is the best way to go. Their beef, their bison, their pork, their bacon, their chicken, it's all awesome stuff. Check them out, stayclassymeats.com. Small batch farms out of Bozeman, Montana. These people are doing it right. Use the code SAVAGE at checkout for 10% off. The Breath Belt, finally today, my favorite piece of equipment. It's really the only piece of equipment I'll wear nowadays. I use it for heavy deadlifts, but you can use it for any kind of athletic activity, especially if you have some kind of psoas issue or hip issue or back issue. The Breath Belt is for you. There's a million different ways to use this thing. I highly recommend checking it out for yourself, and use the code SAVAGE20, all caps SAVAGE20 at checkout at thebreathbelt.com. Today on the show, my brother, Brandon Lilly, on the show, second time around. We got to sit down and talk about life, about the state of the world, about friends and neighbors and everything in between. So it was a great conversation. I love this guy. Plan on having him on the show many, many more times. So sit back and enjoy this one, guys, and we'll see you at the end. All right. Brandon Lilly back on the podcast, second time on here, right?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me again, especially after the first one. You know, you never know how they're going to play out, but I love the first one. Thought we had a good conversation, so I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. That was up in we were up in Ashland. You were up visiting the team that year.
Yeah, that was it was pretty cool to see, man. You know, you see somebody like Judd, and Coach Logan is who I'm referring to as Judd, and he's just a phenomenal human being, and to see kind of how much juice he's gotten from the squeeze with the facilities that he has, and really the things that he's built there. It's still amazing to me how many national champions a guy like that can turn out. And he, along with a few other people, man, that trip was a pivot point for me. And I know that's an overused word right now, but I thought I was a lot better coach than I was. You know, I know that I'm a knowledgeable coach and I've got a ton of experience, but I think I got in my little bubble for a while and kind of thought my shit didn't stink. And to go out to a place like this and just see a guy who's organically doing the basics really, really well,
Yeah.
um, it made me pause. And if you notice, you can look about since that time, there's been no coaching other than the stuff that I'm doing for Peace, Love, and Meat. I haven't put up hiring, taking athletes for my coaching or anything like that,
Oh,
because I really just needed to step back from it. I needed
yeah.
to kind of evaluate what kind of coach I want to be.
That's interesting. Just the fact that you can realize that is a major step. I was lucky enough that when I started my coaching of athletes, he was literally the first person I went to, and this was really we barely had the internet at this time. So I went
Sure.
down, and he was good enough to just take me under his wing, this 20 something year old kid. And as a 20 something year old kid, you always think you know everything too. And
Yeah.
man, he just blew my mind. And like you said, he's got it's basically a cave where he has all these athletes in there, and he's just putting out athlete after athlete, all American after all American. And he is a very humbling guy in the best possible way.
Yeah. Well, a funny thing about it, and to kind of talk about, again, living in that bubble of the powerlifting world, as you know, is a very small community. And at some level, if you have a name in that sport, you can kind of play king of the castle or king of the mountain. And I'll never forget going to Summer Strong and Bert introducing me to Judd and a couple other guys there. And I very, very quickly realized, one, these people were like, 4-time Olympian, Navy SEAL, on and on and on. And that humbled me. But then to listen to Judd speak and to listen to the journeys and the sacrifice and things like that, it kind of put me in a place of, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only person that struggles. I'm not the only one that has sacrificed and made bad decisions and all this other stuff. And I think for me, a lot of that really began the essence of, and I'd already had my knee injury. So I think I was already searching for some answers. I don't know that I would have come full circle at 32. I think maybe as I neared 40 or 45, I do think people progress as they age and
Yeah.
views on the world change. But seeing those type of people and seeing how humble they were and knowing how puffed up I was, really just something for me that I'm grateful that I had that humbling, because I think whatever comes on the other side of this momentary pause in coaching, this momentary pause in my training, I kind of went to kettlebell stuff
Mm-hmm.
this past year. It was all for the same reason. It's like, how much do you really know if you only know one thing? And if you only know one thing, you better be the most knowledgeable at it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a training life crisis. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but my training had been one dimensional for so long that it's just been fun to get out and really actualize being an athlete again, not necessarily just being tied to a barbell, but if a workout consists of training, in a gym, or if it consists of just doing pull-ups outside or taking a hike, doing a ruck, going swimming, like, I'm just too excited for life to put myself in a box of any sort. I don't want any limitation.
Yeah. And I think we're on a similar journey. Through Highland Games, we had a very specific way of training for years and years and years. And then when I started training clients, it was the same way. Well, this is the best way to train, obviously, because I had been able to be friends with Judd. I'd be able to go down to West Side and talk to those guys, or John Smith at Southern Illinois. This is obviously the best way to train. I should train everybody this way. And then
Right.
I was just talking on a podcast the other day that I really don't think I had my style of training until I was until I was at least 40 years old, where it became
Yeah.
Valenti's style of training as opposed to just trying to find the best style of training.
Yeah, brother, I'm with you right there, because it's funny. I was just having this conversation with Josh Smith about the fact he's an amazing knife maker. He's a master bladesmith, and
Yeah, I saw you doing some forging yesterday on
yeah,
Instagram.
Yeah, it was just a phenomenal time. And again, he's another person that's very humbling in the fact that what he classified what we accomplished collectively as a skill level 9 out of 10. And he never really touched what we were working on. So it was just his guidance and his direction. So to be able to translate purely a basic beginner, I've hammered around on 4 knives prior, but to be able to translate to a basic beginner and achieve a level 9 grade outcome,
Yeah.
that's a testament to the kind of teacher that he is. There was no rush. There was no, it was just the best direction that he could do at every turn. And it's one of those things that makes me just feel like I've got to get to that level. I saw
Mm-hmm.
Tanya George as a coach. She's a good friend of mine in Manchester. She had a almost 95% blind and like 97% deaf individual that wanted to learn to power lift. So
Jeez.
it was all touch and sensory stuff. And just looking at these kind of people and looking at yourself, like the evolution that you've made, and I'm saying all this to get back to a point. I think that, as Josh said, yeah, I copied the hell out of everybody in the beginning because that's all I knew to do.
Yeah.
And at some point you start to navigate away and find like, okay, and it was kind of like me with the cube method. It
Mm-hmm.
was probably the worst time in my life to have been like creative, because I needed money more than I needed to really like delve into this thing. So we put out the book and we made a little money on it, but it was like we could have done better with it. And that's something that
Mm-hmm.
still eats at me really, really strongly today, is that it was low level for the worth of the idea. Do you see what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
execution didn't match the quality of the idea. And I think now, coming back to it and really looking at my training in a different way, I kind of want to rectify that and share my training ideas now, share my
Mm-hmm.
training ideas and beliefs, kind of the stuff that we've talked about in the past of, you start a kid out at 2 years old or 1 years old swimming, 2 or 3 years old gymnastics, the progression
Yeah.
of a life of strength, not just a power lifter, but the life of strength, and the, extending your life throughout these modalities of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of what I'm on. It's
Yeah. And
it's
I mean,
it's
think,
it's hard to pare it down.
and think about how much more knowledge you have. Just, I mean, how old's the cube? Is it it's a decade
Yeah,
old,
it's
maybe?
it's yeah, legitimately. Well, we'll call it. It'll be 10 years next year.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, think of all the changes you've made to your training, to your life, and all those things integrated with each other. And, I mean, I read the cube. I love the cube,
yeah, yeah.
but I would be super psyched to see where you've gone and what your thoughts are now, and see that written down. And, I don't think we can ever um, begrudge ourselves for our younger versions. It's like, fuck, if I do that, I could spend a lifetime apologizing to everyone I was a dickhead to while I was throwing, or
Yeah.
every girl I treated like shit until I met my wife, or I mean, just, you could do that your whole life with everything you do.
Well, at some point, the idea was, I don't remember who said it, but it was a very valuable point for me, because, I did go through this, I guess, realization point where all those things, when your kind of bubble gets burst and you realize, oh, I'm not invincible. I'm not 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and this isn't forever. You know, there were a lot of those guilt feelings. And this guy told me, he said, man, if you stay guilty forever, you're going to die in a prison in your mind. And he was like, if you keep apologizing, that means you keep making mistakes. So you ain't really sorry, so he was just putting it out there. Like, we are the answer to all our problems. And that was just it. It was like, if you can make a bad choice, you can make a good one.
Yeah,
Got to turn
yeah.
it around.
That's it's and what's nice is the fact that I feel like I went from being an athlete to being like the old wizard on the hill. Like,
Yeah.
I love to talk to these young athletes and just kind of say, hey, and I get questions, and you'll say, hey, that's not the way I would do this, and this is the way I would do it, and here's why. And I understand you want to be a great strong man, but maybe gaining 70 pounds isn't the best way to do this. And it's kind of nice to be the old stage now instead of the young buck coming up.
I agree. I mean, something I've been kind of focusing on, I like to chew on quotes and I like to chew on ideas for a while. And one that's been lingering, my dad, you hear the saying all the time, they don't make it like they used to. And my dad said something to me and he goes, did you ever think that we don't treat things the way that we used to? And man, what the hell? It made me
Yeah.
think about training in such a way that I was just like you were saying, if I was coaching somebody, I immediately tried to override whatever they should have been, like whatever they were doing
Yeah.
was like, you have to go my way, you have to do this. But aging out and being able to kind of look back from the perspective of, I don't know exactly where this athlete is going, but if he's asking me for some help on his bench press, don't overwhelm him. If you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting there in the gym beside this person, talking pre-COVID, of course, if you're sitting here beside this person and they just say, man, could you help me with my bench? Like, what do you see? Give them one thing, you know? And I think as an older person, I'm not looking for that ego stroke for that kid to be overwhelmed and bamboozled by what I say. I think he's really honestly looking for help, or she's really honestly looking for help. And that's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be somebody that can give direction without trying to attach myself to the idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. My son is a track and field thrower, and I mean, I was a thrower. I was a pro thrower. It's what I know. Um, but I have another guy working with him who's an Ashland
Mm,
grad, and um, they work together, and they have a very good rapport with each other. And I could sit there all day and give him tips and like try to take some kind of credit for his success, but it's like, hey, I think the best thing for him is me be dad and Zach be coach, and let
yeah.
Zach do this with him. And it again, I think it comes back to just aging out of our egos and figuring out what's best for the people around us and how do we serve people better. And it's hard when you're younger to figure out. I don't think I would have been able to override my ego and have someone else coach my kid when I was in my 30s,
Yeah. Well, how old are you now? 44?
47.
47. Okay. So you're a little bit ahead of the curve on me. And I think that's why I'm trying to pay attention to you. And there's a couple other guys that I look at and just see what you're into. That's maybe like, I don't know about that. But there was a time when I looked at kettlebells completely and it's like, I don't
Yes.
know about that. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at what you're doing right now. And there's a lot of people out there like Brian McKenzie's another guy that I look at. And I'm really having fun, like being a kid again. And
Hmm.
I'm learning this again with my son because he's the same way. He's got a program at school. He played football this year. He wants to play baseball. Um, you know, and I'm like, I'm not trying to tell him too much what to do or, course correct too much because I want him to have his identity. I want
Yeah.
him to understand that this is his journey. I'm here for support, but this is what his coach says. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to put myself above the coach.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I generally won't say wouldn't be what I would do, but at
Right.
the same time, when I'm looking at it, it's like there's no harm in what he had him do.
Hmm.
So for me, I think my biggest change around him also mirrors the fact of what you're talking about. When I was younger and when he was younger, I think every father has this envisioned idea of what they want their son to be. They want him to be this strong, hulking warrior, and whatnot. And my son is a good athlete. He's very much a specimen of sorts. But there are kids that are better athletes, and there are
Hmm.
kids that love it more than he does. But he also has talents that if I just focused on that side of him, if I just focused on that development or really tearing him down because he isn't what I thought he would
Hmm.
be or should be or whatever, I'm missing the fact that this is a really, really special kid from tip
Yeah.
to tail.
Yeah.
Um, I see it a lot, man, and I'm sure you do too.
Hmm.
You see a lot of parents that get so wrapped up in that stuff, and it's no good for anybody.
Yeah. It's funny to go to like high school football games and stuff and see parents get so upset and just flying off the handle or yelling and screaming. I'm just like, man, I love my kid, but I just don't care enough about 15-year-olds playing football that I'm going to get this pissed off about something, you know?
Yeah. Well, I've always told him, I just want him to be a positive reinforcement on the field. If that's a physical play or if that's clapping somebody up when they made a bad play,
Yeah.
whatever it is, just be a leader and not, it doesn't have to be this force thing. Just doesn't have to be seen. Walk
Yeah.
over, pat somebody
Yeah.
on the ass, walk over and, grab somebody by the face mask and talk to them a little bit, or, just get in their ear. I think that's the one thing that I'm most proud of about him is that he is a leader. And I think if you look at sports across, all spectrums on a team sport, most of your best leaders aren't the best athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady, for example, we'll just use him. He's not going to outrun anybody in a 40,
Yeah.
but he's Tom Brady. So I think that's the kind of thing that I'm encouraging the most is those behaviors and maybe the thought process of like reading his teammates a little better. Like, okay, what's his body language say? What's his play telling you? Just be that person that you show up. And that's really all I can control because that carries over to life more than anything.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I hope that we're building leaders more and more. I'm hoping that there's people listening to this podcast or following your Instagram feed or whatever that are focusing on what they can focus on. I mean, we're in a time now in this country where forget about the virus. I think the biggest problem we have in this country is a lack of leadership at all levels. And it made and I'll probably take heat for saying this, it made a pretty weak virus just ravaged the whole country, if not the world, because we just didn't have anybody there saying, hey, we can handle this. We don't need to panic. Let's do things the right way. Let's have some common sense. And I think we just have a total lack of leadership. And I'm hoping the next generation coming up, the generation that's going to take care of us, is better and sees the mistakes that the generation in front of us is making. That baby boomer generation, I hope is a warning sign to people.
I'm afraid that it's only worsening, and I'll tell you why. What you kind of just mentioned right there is along the same lines of what I was saying. Rushing this information, or it's more important to get the information out there in some level of truth, rather than to get it accurate.
Yeah.
Let's back up to what I said about the cube method. It was a rushed process. I was in a situation where, it's like, I wasn't broke, but I was just like, oh, an extra $500 a month. That would be fantastic. So wanted to get it out there as quickly as I could. Obviously, social media allowed that to happen. But think about if there was no social media, we would have to go through the steps of writing, collecting data, editing, and so on before it's worth a shit enough for anybody to print it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with this information around COVID to me, is that there was nobody that said, hey, I mean, and this is my opinion, I think you would have had some, again, this will probably make death threats towards me too. But the thing about it is, I think if somebody had stepped forward and said, look, obviously something's going on here. We just need to take a step back.
Yeah.
Let's at least look at wearing a mask for 30 days so we can gather some information. We need some data because, dude, we were just reporting the data. We weren't actually leading people in any safe way or form of what forward was. It was like, yeah, this is a fearful thing, but let's keep going with our lives. Let's wear a mask if we can, or let's stay home if we can. I mean, just suggestions. When things started becoming mandates, that's when you have guys like you or me really raise our hand and ask why. And it's not from the fact that I've had a flu shot in my life. I had a flu shot this year. I have no problem with the idea. I have the problem with the idea that, like you said, even the death toll, let's say it is killing people. We know it's killing people, but at what rate of accuracy is COVID killing people? Is COVID just, are we carrying these numbers over from an early diagnosis and 30 days later they die of a heart attack? But it's still, the debriefing of what COVID actually looks like, if anybody's willing to be honest about it, will be terrifying. I believe, I'm certainly not a virologist, and I certainly don't have enough answers about it, but there's no question to me that there are misreportings at some level, one, and two, that the leadership, as you said, and I agree, really failed to have control of themselves. And that immediately, just by default, lacks any control for the people.
Yeah.
The information just became so polarized immediately because they kept flip-flopping. Well, masks are great. Well, now masks they're going to enhance the virus. And it became a very, very ugly thing amidst the most polarizing political campaigns I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And if you weren't divided on the presidential election, you started getting divided on COVID. And then it just became a lot of friction for a lot of people. And I mean, Jesus, like, you look at the world that we live in, where people are actually celebrating the suppression of someone on social media, especially a
Yeah.
president. And here's the only thing that I say to that. And let me clarify before I jump in this deep water. I will listen with eagerness and excitement to anyone who disagrees with me. And I will explain myself, or I will let you explain yourself. And sometimes, I might even be influenced to look at a situation different. I would just hope the same respect and courtesy is given. So for me, I don't disagree that Trump has come off very, very terribly in a lot of ways, especially with some of the tit for tat stuff on Twitter, the name calling and that kind of stuff. I have no doubt about that. The grounds that they use to remove him for inciting violence, how many people, celebrity status with blue checks, said go down here, protest, whatever. If you manipulated the phrasing, if you just manipulated the angle of the lens a little bit, we got a lot of people that incited violence.
Yeah.
And my defense is not of President Trump, the man. My defense is of any American that could ever be banned.
Mm-hmm.
Because once the domino falls, it's only so long before they gain other controls. And my biggest fear in all of this is that we're learning, if you're paying attention, I believe you're learning right now, that they don't have to change the Constitution to suppress.
No.
So the government can't mandate a vaccine, but if Ticketmaster says you can't come to any of our concerts without a vaccine, you can't come to a Major League Baseball game without a vaccine, you can't get on a Delta Airlines flight without a vaccine. Well, guess what? Corporate America, because the government can insist that these places follow guidelines, or we can shut you down. We don't have a real strict guideline of what we can or can't shut you down for. So we'll just enforce these rules. But if you go to the maximum, if you get vaccinated and have all your employees vaccinated and require vaccination, then we won't bother you.
Yeah.
They can mandate the corporations, and then the corporations turn and mandate us.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me, is that it didn't used to cost a lot to be an American, you know? And freedom, I think, we've trivialized the word freedom.
Yeah.
We are certainly not free. We are not living free by any regards of what I think the envisionment of freedom is. The fact that you can work an hour, or you work 10 hours and 4 of them go to pay for other programs,
Right.
and 6 of them come
Right.
to you. I have no problem helping fellow Americans, especially ones that have been down and out, because certainly when I've been down and out, I've been helped. But what I can tell you is there is no sense of the American fabric. What is America anymore? We've shamed our national anthem. We don't allow our kids to say the pledge in school anymore. Like, what is the tie that binds us anymore? And I don't think that that's a thing to be afraid of, that we are diverse, that we are different. I think it's scary to lose the identity that something bonds us. And for me, I mean, I have a flag tattooed on my back. I have the American eagle kind of over a shield, and I'm looking at a flag waving right now. And it's like, there has to be some recognition of, that's why that we can do this. That's why I can say this. And if you start quieting people for having opinions that are different than yours, and there are equally as extreme people on the other side, but they're on your side now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just a dangerous, ugly, murky, dark water when potentially and here's the one last question I'll say to anybody. And this was actually why I kind of gave that preface of like, I'll listen to anybody's argument. Supposedly, this is the guy with the thickest dossier every morning of what the actual fuck is happening in the world. Right? That guy can't talk to us anymore.
Yeah.
And he is our president. But what scares me even more, because of suppression like that, let's say that you saw, House of Cards situation. Let's say that you saw Joe Biden do something horrific. Well, I was actually having an honest conversation, just a general exchange of fact as we knew it between a friend of mine in Europe. And I tried to send some media over there, just photographs from AP. It would not let me send it to Europe because it was politically based or COVID related. That's what the little thing said on there. So imagine me having real information about something devastating. They've already intercepted this because it's like, okay, let's say Joe Biden, assaulted someone. Well, it's like Joe Biden assault pushes you up to another level. Or I don't know how it works or whatever, but why did they intercept a picture that was AP?
Yeah.
It was like, so I don't know where the parameters are on this, but I already feel somewhat suppressed just because of that one incident. Like, this is a friend of mine who's asking what the hell's going on in America, and I'm sharing an article with them.
Yeah.
An article that they could easily Google themselves, but I can't nudge them in the direction of the article now.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's one of the most dangerous things, and I understand private companies. You're a private company, I guess. If you want to ban people from your private business, I get that. But then Parler comes out, and people start moving over to Parler, and the other big tech companies get together and collude and destroy it. So now they can't. Now you can be kicked off not just someone's platform, but you can be kicked off the internet in general. So if I come out and say something it would be anti-Biden. If I said something anti-Biden, if I said something COVID related that maybe someone thought wasn't true, it's not that I'm being kicked off Twitter or Instagram. I can be kicked off the whole internet. And that's what I mean. That is a whole different level of shadiness that I can't even comprehend at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, you would think that the president, as the president, he could have a conversation with Zuckerberg or Jack from Twitter, have a conversation with these guys and like, look, let's really get to the meat and potatoes of this. I'm being attacked. I'm being, and let me just clarify. Trump is my president, so I will honor and respect that position. If I was a political advisor of his, I'd be smacking him over the head left and right. He's made some bonehead moves when he could have made better moves. He played checkers sometimes when he could have played chess. But it's tragic to me that this nation has really bastardized the office of someone who's done a lot of good. Love him or hate him, Jared Kushner, he bagged out some serious Middle Eastern policy deals. 5 of them, I believe. I know it was 4, possibly 5 Middle East peace treaties. And I mean, like, if you listen to stuff like Al Jazeera, or you listen to some of the Australian news outlets, or even the BBC, they're praising these peace deals left and right. And it's like, why aren't we doing that? Like, why aren't we doing that? And then it's just a scary thing to me. And it's very easy for someone who's just taking 30-second chunks of this and say, oh my God, these guys are conspiracy theorists. Man, like, I don't think anybody has the right answer. Nobody knows anything. So we're just all scrambling for something. I have no idea what's going to transpire between now and January 20th. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think after the Capitol thing, I think Trump threw all those guys under the bus. He he basically came out and said, "We're going to prosecute all these guys." And I think it was whether it was his mea culpa or his, please don't get me in trouble now that I'm leaving office deal. But, I think he was surrounded. He was there to drain the swamp, but he surrounded himself with the swampiest characters you'd ever want to meet. You know, he took all these people from the Bush administration and surrounded himself, and they weren't interested in him doing well as a president or getting out of foreign wars or any of that stuff, you know?
No. Well, it's a case of Julius Caesar right now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Those closest to him are the one that stabbed him in the front and stabbed him in the back.
Sure.
And and again, like I said, I got all kinds of issues with Trump as an individual, but as our president, I cannot in any conscience root against the man. Just like if Biden takes over, or when they kick him out and Kamala takes over, I can't root against her either, you know?
Yeah, right.
Little foreshadowing there for you, but you know, I think but I have to say, like, I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed that we are at a place where we're actually getting in line to support the idea that these geriatrics are going to run this country. I mean, go talk to an average 80-year-old person. I don't care how smart they are, and disregard your grandmother, because I'm sure she's the best. So I'm not saying this to insult anybody, but there are people out there that don't even know what TikTok is. There are people out there that don't have an Instagram account or a Facebook account, or they don't have 50 people running and managing those accounts for them. They actually get a paycheck. They haven't lived off a silver spoon their entire lives. You know, these people still don't know what's going on with the average 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old. You know, they're out of touch. So these people who have these mega generational wealth, and they've never ever had to struggle a day in their life. They never have to worry about health insurance. They never have to worry about hardship at any level. How are we trusting these people to understand and lead us when they don't even know who the hell we are?
Yeah.
You know, we can do so much better, and that's my whole problem with all of it. I can tell you, I have no problem with female leadership, none whatsoever. I could tell you probably 10 people in my hometown who I think would be a better female vice president than Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
But how did she get there? On what credentials? You know, how did Biden get there amidst all the collusion and all the stuff going on with his son in Russia? Like, this is what we elected. And maybe the other side of the coin is we would have reelected Trump. And I don't know what that looked like either, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing to me that, you know, for the last, well, you know, I mean, for a long time, I've never voted in a presidential election, and people ask me about that all the time. And I just say, look, you know, you haven't given me a Teddy Roosevelt yet. You haven't given me a George Washington yet. You know, when someone's worth my time to take time out of my business and my day to go down there and stand behind somebody and say, this is my guy or girl or whatever. But it just never happened in my lifetime since I've been 18 years old. And that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. And I respect you for that. You know, people say, well, you don't vote, you don't have a say. Not voting is having a say.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe
my
that.
say. Yeah.
You know, I have that belief. And I think that, you know, every American has the right to pursue liberty, to pursue freedom, to pursue happiness. And I just think, to me, there's a lot of people right now. Listen, man, it's just like somebody said the other day, the person that wants a gun to protect their family is just the same as the person who doesn't want guns on the street to protect their family.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The same end brings us all together. Hey, nobody wants the bad guy. Nobody wants our kids to be hurt. Nobody wants our women to be raped. Nobody wants our men to be shot in the back. Like, we just don't want these things, but we're approaching it from two different angles. So if we can look at it like, hey, we all want what's better for everybody, and you just start having really simple conversations, like, don't get too close to the flame just yet. Let's talk about public safety. Let's talk about this. What can we address before we ever even look at guns? Let's figure out all the shit that we're on the same page about. But the thing is that scares me about the United States is we don't know our neighbors anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know those people that, you know, would bring you a lasagna or a casserole dish when you moved into town or into the neighborhood and invite you over for dinner or have a picnic or whatever. We've all just gotten so busy kind of chasing the dangling carrot that we've sold ourselves out in a great way, you know? So I think I try to take the positive route in everything. And what I will say about all of this, I think that just like everything, there's a pendulum, but I think that there are a lot of people like yourself, like me, who are paying attention, who aren't necessarily jumping to conclusions, who aren't necessarily like running out here trying to be a pseudo patriot.
Mhm.
I can tell you right now, if things got very serious, I have certain lines in my head that I've drawn. Like, I will not stand for these things.
Right.
And whatever level of protest or activism or, whatever comes down the line, I promise you I've thought about it.
Yeah.
I just don't know that enough Americans are thinking about things
Yeah.
in general. So hopefully, to be positive, I hope that people are asking themselves, like, what are my limits? How much
Yeah.
will I take? What is going to be the threshold of where I say enough is enough? And I think if people start having those conversations, just like I said on a IG Live there a couple days ago, 330 million people that said enough is enough, you'd see some change in a minute.
Mhm.
But we got to stop fighting ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I sound like I have all the answers and I'm, standing on my soapbox,
Well,
but it just, when anything works, it's when people are communicating and working together. That's it.
so
Like,
having the answers is a lot of it is common sense. Hey, we should talk to each other. Hey, we should have
yeah,
these conversations. Hey, we should not suppress people's ideas. If I've got a bad idea, let me put it out there so everyone can say how stupid I am.
right.
That's how these ideas get pushed away. They don't get pushed away by suppressing them. They just make them more popular that way. The my biggest concern this whole year again has not been the virus. It's what the virus has allowed government to do to us. It's
Yeah.
allowed them to seize our businesses. It's allowed them to put in arbitrary rules. It's allowed them to use it to, political gain. I can just see. I was so upset about how quickly we rolled over when this happened and said, "We're scared. Here, take all our freedoms, please. Lock us in
Yeah.
our homes."
It it showed the world. I mean, we've shown the world our ass a little bit in
Yeah.
2020,
Yep.
even with the Capitol situation. Um, I can't believe that happened, and I'll tell you why. 2003, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm there with a friend of mine, and they were working there, and they were actually working for Ben Chandler. He's a representative from the state of Kentucky. So I'm just kind of meandering along, and like, if you've ever been to DC, it's always under construction,
Yeah.
always. And I was near the Capitol building, and I was coming out of their office. I wound my way around this sidewalk detour thing, and I see on this grass, there's two walked paths. They're kind of beaten down, a little bit muddy, but they had put straw over it, and it said detour, but it didn't specify one way or the other. One looked like a little bit wider, maybe more welcoming, but where I was going was directly across the other one. So I started easing across this thing, and I mean, I had two guards on me in a second, like
Right.
in a second. And now, granted, it's one person versus a mass. I get
Yeah.
that, but I had two guards on me in a second, rifle and a pistol, and you know, it was an honest mistake. I
Hmm.
couldn't imagine having walked through there with bad intention what would have happened.
Right. Right.
So there's a little fishy smell to a lot of it. Like I said, I don't know what the answer is or the why of it. Like, why the hell would you do that? But if you're asking me, you know, what my perception is of the world's perception of the United States, because I talk to a lot of people around, the globe, and it's not good, man. Like,
Yeah.
they're worried because they do understand the fact that the United States is a stabilizer in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're kind of watching with a lot on the line too. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine a world, and maybe it's a false idea of how good we are, but I can't imagine a world where the United States wasn't at least guiding the policy of good. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe that's a romanticized view because I don't live around the world, but it seems to be that the friends that I have understand that we are a strong support system to what their lives are.
Yeah. Yeah, and where else are you going to go? Where else are you going to go? If I mean, we talked earlier about whether or not we're actually free or not, and I'll argue to the death that we're not
Yep.
free men. We have more freedom than most, but we're not free men. And but where else are you going to go? You're not going to get that anywhere else. And without us there standing guard, standing vigil, you're not gonna, it's not gonna stand up for very much longer.
I just keep hoping that people wake up through this. People wake up and say, well, maybe we don't need the 4,000 square foot house. We can get by with the 2,500.
Yeah.
Like, if people can wake up and start making some better choices and like, hey, kids, just twice a week, we're going to have dinner at the table. Little sacrifices like that. Because it has happened through this. That's what I'll say is I'm not imagining that this is just going to poof and happen, but some of these things began to happen for a lot of people. And I'm hoping that they started to feel good enough to where it's like, wait a minute, even when things get back to normal, quote unquote, maybe we should get together more than once a year. Maybe we should sit down at the dinner table 2 or 3 nights a week. I certainly know that with my family and my group of friends, I've been very, very fortunate. Like, the text groups that I've had have expanded. They've been more, we've had some good memes and stuff in there too, but they've just been a lot more like healthy, as in how you doing, how you really doing, those kind of things. So I think that at least in my circle, and I don't have a huge circle of people I'm talking about, but at least in my 10 to 15 people that I really, really, really rely on, it seems like we've done a good job of at least toeing the line and not going backwards this year. It might not, might not be the same. I know some friends of mine that took some serious financial hits because they own businesses, but amidst all that, their health got better, their relationships got better. I have one friend, I mean, they're a couple and they own a restaurant. And as you can imagine, a restaurant business is a nightmare anyway. Well, they shut the restaurant's doors. They used some of the PPE money to keep their people paid for, and they took some savings out. They got a food truck that was still able to work some, and they were at a point where they were just like, the money was running out, time was running out. They were at each other's throats, and somehow, some way, they just had this idea that we got to stop fighting each other on this. Simplified some things, changed their menu up a little bit, and they're doing really well. I mean, they're doing really, really well. So that goes to show you, I know everybody is having those moments where it's like, you probably know this person a little better now than you thought you did after all that's gone on. But I think it all comes back down to communication, man. I think people need to get out of their phones and look people in the face. I don't know. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I'm just as guilty as anyone.
If we all just focus on our circles, and those circles will start touching each other, and it's we can't change the world. I can't talk to people that don't necessarily agree with me on issues and across the world and make them understand. But if I can keep my circle squared away, and my circle touches your circle, and that circle touches somebody else's circle, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you have all these circles who are all squared away and are doing the right things. And I think that's the only way that we can pull this back from the brink, is just small grassroots efforts.
I think so. And I think we need to be really, really careful in who we kind of give the title of hero or leader. Because I've seen people really get kind of loud about some of their ideas and beliefs, and it's very easy for that to give that dopamine drip, that toxic drip, where it's like, okay, I said these things and my views went up and my likes went up, so I'll say these things. And man, at the extremes, the algorithm supports the extremes. Because the more comments you get, good or bad, it doesn't decipher if this guy said, I want to kill you. It just realizes that's another comment. So it's very easy for people to kind of become celebrity for their stance. What I want to see, there's a few people I'm watching right now. I'm waiting to see what their next moves are, but there are some people that are really, really, I think, manage that well. One of those guys being Mike Glover. I think, he's kind of navigated those waters well. He'll go on a 25-minute IG live and really explain his ideas, engage with people. I didn't know much about him until I met him at an event out with a Black Rifle, and the guy was I didn't know he was a pseudo, like I say, so called pseudo celebrity or whatever. I didn't know that he was who he was
Right.
until the event was nearly over, because he was just a really down to earth, pleasant guy. He wasn't there on a soapbox like
Yeah.
talking politics at all. He was there with a bunch of guys that were disabled, or they, adaptive athletes at the Total Archery Challenge, and it was all about them. So he was totally just checking in on these guys. How you doing?
Yeah.
Where you from? What's your story? Um, so that's when I started paying attention to the guy. And, sometimes he goes a little deep space, deep web, underworld kind of stuff on me. But listen, he's putting thought ideas out there. He's
Right.
giving people something to think about. And he's not saying this is right. He's just saying there's something wrong here. And these are some angles that I'm looking at it from.
Yeah.
That's what we all need to be willing to look at things from more than one perspective. And I just don't know that my son's generation, even despite our best efforts to raise a healthy, happy son, are making him aware of these things, because he's in his phone and he's in a video game, and it's like it's hard, and we're
Yeah.
trying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a hard thing, and our extended family is the same way. They all support and try to raise him up, and I don't know. It's the hardest thing in the world right now, is to look at our kids and know what to tell them. You
Yeah.
know.
I think if we can, and it's a hard job. Nobody sane wants the job of leadership, as far as like presidency or governor. But if we can convince these people, like a Mike Glover, like a Jocko Willing, that, hey, we need you. You served your
Yeah.
country once. We need you again. This is not some ego thing for you. We understand that we need help. It's your turn. Let's see what you can do. You know,
Were you interested in the Jocko Tulsi talk?
I liked it.
I did too.
I don't have any problem. First of all, I think if you're going to be president of the United States, you should have served. That comes from a guy who never served.
Same
If you're
here.
going to be commander in chief, you should have served. I look at Tulsi as a person who would have been ideally suited for the times we're in. Not only is she a strong leader, she seems to really stand by her convictions. And hell, she was a nurse. I mean,
Yeah.
who else? I have no faith that either Trump or Biden have any understanding of virology or any of this stuff. But
Yeah.
She would have. I
Well,
think a
she's
Tulsi
an
Jocko
excellent
ticket would have been great.
She's an excellent communicator too.
Yeah.
Of ideas, and I
And
took a
she
lot of
doesn't toe the party line. She's gone her own way a couple times on Title IX, being opened up to transgender athletes and things like that. She's not going to get popularity points from her people doing that.
No, I think I really felt. I tell you what disenfranchised me or disenchanted with me with the whole political spectrum this year was when they didn't give her a chance to debate.
No, they got rid of her quick.
Yeah, and because I think she was going to be able to back up what she was saying.
Yep.
She's a really, really good communicator in the interviews that I've seen and watched the one with Rogan there. But I would hope that Jocko coming on that ticket, let's just assume that it had happened. I hope that wouldn't have trivialized it, because he is a fantastic, fantastic leader, proven on the battlefield, and that's coming from guys that, there's a handful of guys that I don't know personally, but you can read it online, that served, that were SEALs, that are like, oh, he ain't shit. It's dick envy is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but the guys that I know and the guys that I've talked to in certain circles are like, man, he was just a good soldier. He was a really good soldier. And I don't think he's ever professed himself to be anything more than that. He's never tried to make himself the hero. But he's an effective leader and communicator, and the both of them. And they really do. The thing is I like what about both of them, Jocko is obviously unwavering Second Amendment guy. And Tulsi has some situations where she's like, I think we could do better.
Right.
And, I sit on that line of,
I
I don't
too.
think, I'll tell you why. and I like to back that up in case anybody hears that and they try to come at me. I was at a gun shop here in Kentucky, central Kentucky. This man came in with what appeared to at least be some form of physical handicap. There was some strained effort to walk around, to get around, and it was laborious. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
For that person, if I stop the story right there, I can fully understand why that person would want a gun. I can fully understand if somebody came in their house, they don't have the ability to stand up and fight. They might be stuck in a position. But the story continues. This guy goes over to the counter and the guy pulls out a pistol and he can't even push the slide back.
Yeah.
He's so disabled he can't even push the slide back. Drops the gun twice in the floor and ended up buying the handgun.
Yeah.
And the guy from the store put it in the case, wrapped it in the bag, and walked it and the guy to the car.
Yeah.
The guy has no ability. I mean, thank God it was a, and I don't want to say the company's name, but it was a slide. It didn't have a,
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a revolver. I mean, a revolver could have really done some damage to this guy.
Yeah.
But in those situations, I think a gun shop owner should have the ability to say, I'm not so sure about this one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's me personally. And that is one experience where I have seen, I had a real red flag in my mind about what was going on here. It bothered me because what if this guy goes out and gets hurt? What if this guy hurts somebody? I mean, it should never be a closed door conversation. Right. I think that we should always be willing to hear it, always be, and that's anything. Like you brought up the transgender stuff. Listen, live your life, do what you do. I cannot imagine asking 330 people to, and I'll speak specifically to sport, to have equal unified belief around something like that, you know? But I think that we all can understand that, hey, if you don't bother me, I might think you're crazy. I may think that you're full of shit. I may think whatever, but if you're not bothering me, fine, do whatever, you know? And I think the problem is the kind of the boiling point of all of this, you know, Morgan Freeman said it. There's been other people that said it. We keep making these things newsworthy. And they even said it about the lady that coached the NBA game. They're like, I wish this wasn't news at all. Right. You know, she's the best coach for the job. I wish this wasn't even news at all. So we need to stop heroizing these people so quickly, you know, over and over and over, because then it becomes like, oh, again, to go back to that dopamine hit, if I am extreme or if I am different or if I am, you know, I can gain from this. And I think that it's very, very dangerous society when we reward people for being, you know, extreme. And I think that, man, I listen to my son talk about school and some of the problems that he has and some of the things that he's dealing with right now. Kids are confused. Yeah. I think that at 18 years old, you have the right to be and decide, choose to do and live your life however you want, on your dime, on your time. Yeah. We got a real serious situation if we're sitting here getting to decide, well, little Johnny plays with the Barbie doll, so, you know, I want to reassign him as his parent. Yeah. You know, I know I'm getting like, I don't know what I'm really saying here, because I just don't even know how to feel. I don't even know how to feel about it. Like, I don't know how to, you know, whether it's like, go ahead.
Well, whether it's guns or whether it's gender reassignment or whether it's, you know, abortion or any of these topics, it all comes down to there's common sense approaches where the lines are gray. It's not one thing or another. It's somewhere in the middle, and we need to be able to sit down and have conversations. And you have somebody like a Tulsi and a Jocko who could sit down and say, okay, all right, you know, here, not that they would be able to make any sweeping changes to the Second Amendment or anything, but at least you can have people who sit down and say, okay, you know, here's the problems, here's some solutions, let's brainstorm this, let's figure out some ways to work around this. And I think that's the only way that you'll get me out of my house to vote for a leader, is if you have someone out there who inspires me to get off the couch and go vote for him, you know, and that ticket would have done it.
Did you guys ever watch debates when you were in school? like from the
In
night
school,
before.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I don't know that there was any redeeming quality
No.
to share with a child from the debates.
No.
You know what I mean? So we need to retrain our children to hear and be informed. I'm not saying sway them politically one way or the other, but politics are a part of American life. So to have information and to be informed and to actually see, that's what, man, this person really looks like a president. They really act like a president. They speak like a president. It brings some like redeeming quality to the office.
Yeah.
When all you see is just like mudslinging, and but that's the thing, again, it goes right back to social media, and that's why I ultimately don't think things will get better, because we are just too easily influenced by the love, the likes, the follows, and all that kind of stuff. It would take something really, really grassroots and some really, really dedicated people,
Yeah.
you know, to overthrow the idea of social media being better than having dinner with the people that you love, putting your phone down for 2 or 3 days in a row. You know, I mean, I don't know where it goes from here, man.
Yeah.
I really don't know, because I mean, everybody seems consumed with it right now.
Yeah.
You know,
And there's so much more to life than these stupid phones. And
but look at this, wouldn't be happening without them. So that's where I fall down the
this
line
is
on it,
true.
because it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I was actually thinking about that this morning. Can you imagine the first time you turned on a television and you saw Alfred Hitchcock after hearing it on the radio?
Right.
You know, like
right.
all these things, like the first telephone call. You know, there was somebody saying that they hadn't talked to their sister. Oh, Josh Smith, the knife maker. He was saying it was his grandmother, I believe. They were the first generation to get the telephone. And, or maybe that was the first time they had a telephone. But she hadn't seen her sister in 5 years. And she said that she finally got a call, and it was just like she sobbed, you know, and it's almost like when things get over, I mean, it's like anything. When you oversaturate something, you just start taking it for granted.
Right.
We need to get back to a point where we're not so expectant. You know, the American way of culture is like, it's the greatest country in the world, but for some reason, people aren't actualizing that. Like, why aren't we teaching our kids or showing our kids there is a way?
Yeah.
Yes, you're starting right here, and little Johnny or little Janie is starting 5 steps ahead of you. You can catch up. It may take longer, may be harder, but you can catch up. Because I still believe, as of right now in the United States, whatever your biggest dream is, somebody will get there, that's starting from a worse place than you are right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so there's just too many success stories even now, and that's what I've really been trying to focus on a lot, is people who are just, I'm sure, like 2020 kicked their ass just like it did everybody's, but they didn't whine about it. They didn't dwell on it. They kept sharing like the truth, but they also kept sharing like, I'm still going, I'm still pushing, I'm still getting better.
Yep.
And that has to become the common thread. I think we have to make stronger kids. We have to do something with our children.
The struggle is for me, the struggle is everything. And I think, the reason why, man, one of the reasons why we have such bad information coming out about COVID, and the reason why we have such bad outcomes for people due to COVID, is because there's not enough people struggling. There's not enough people training. There's not enough people meditating. There's not enough people making sure that their health is on point. We unleashed this, well, we didn't unleash it, but someone unleashed this virus on a very soft, very coddled, very offended society that just wasn't prepared to deal with it. There's not enough, this, not to sound arrogant, but there's not enough people like you and me out there who have been training for this since the 80s. I mean, we were going to be fine.
That's the thing, man, is, Greg Walsh has a great saying. He said, preparation's not paranoia. And I'll tell everybody this. I was having a conversation with Logan Hanks. You guys actually should talk to. He's a really good guy. He has he doesn't really train or anything like that, but he runs a farm. Just a good guy. And we were just talking about a lot of things and how we, as young men who are in this position of like, I don't always think I'm right, but I think I'm trying to do right. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm asking myself questions. I'm looking at tough situations. I try to, like we talked about the transgender situation. I try to look at these things like, what if that was my child, or what if that was my brother, what if that was my sister, or what if that was, whoever you could implement into that framework.
Yep.
Because I think we look at it so many times from, well, I would never do that.
Yeah.
But so we have to get outside of ourselves. And like you said, the meditation stuff, man, I really believe our brain, I mean, you can equate it to a computer. It's a super processor. And even a really good computer in 1996, you start downloading 2 or 3 songs on Napster, it's going to crash, right?
Right.
Or at least mine did. Anyway, but I think our brain is that way too. We don't ever get those ability. We don't ever get the ability, unless we intentionally do it, to stop the stream of incoming
Right.
information.
Yeah.
So if all you're getting is like, I mean, think about turning the pages of a book. If you just 2 seconds and you just turn a page, turn a page, turn a page, turn a page, you can see, like, so you got some of the words and you saw some of the information, but you can't process it.
Right.
So you have to slow it down to a pace where you can process it. And that's what we're failing to get to the point of, is
Yeah.
it just keeps coming. It just keeps coming. And we never get the ability to sit with it and be like, okay, what does that really mean? And
Yeah.
is it even real? I think because I drive so much, I get the opportunity to do that. I find myself, and I never even really have a conscious moment, but it's like the podcast will end and I'll turn it off, or a stream of music will end and I'll turn it off. And it's like, I got 2 more hours to drive. And it's like that subconscious thought, the highway hypnosis, they call it. But,
Right.
my brain ends up covering all these things that I've been thinking about, or should be thinking about, or have, going on inside my head. That's not necessarily sitting down, crossing my legs and oming, you know what I mean? Like, but
Right.
it is a form of meditation, because there's nothing else happening. I just got to keep it between the lines,
Yeah.
and I wish more people could have that, because even throughout the election, like, I've played the game of, if this was really by like design, what's next? And man, you couldn't design it any better if you were trying to cause some
Yeah.
shitstorms in America right
Sure.
now. But I don't know. I look at a lot of things. I will tell you one thing I am a conspiracy nut on, is the idea of 2018 they implement Space Force, right? Which is a militaristic, you
Right.
know, universal defense system. No big deal. Trump's an asshole. He's an idiot. Whatever. That's whatever. The consensus was it was a joke. And then they slip in that stimulus deal. Hey, you got 180 days to declassify all this extraterrestrial UFO, information. If I were to approach you about getting to California for something, like, let's say you're a fireman and you're the only guy that can put out the fires out there, and we got to get you there in a hurry. Well, you could walk, you could ride a horse, ride a bike, take a train, helicopter, or a plane, or I can tell you to hold on and let me invent an entirely new process to get you to California.
Right.
That's kind of how the vaccine went with the mRNA stuff. I mean, I know we
Yeah.
have some understanding of it, but we also have a better understanding of anti-vax, the vaccines the prior. I mean, we understand the coronavirus to a great degree. Like,
Right.
Lysol didn't just slap it on their labels because they didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Not saying we understood this one, but I am saying that we understood a lot about
Yeah.
what this is. So my thought is, my kind of like the little kid in my mind wants to imagine that we've been threatened. We set up the defense system. Shit's about to hit the fan, but they can't tell people that the aliens are coming.
Right.
So they expand the hysteria around COVID to get this mRNA vaccine that's a super booster against the impending doom of an alien invasion. Not saying I believe that, not putting the wax seal on that one, but I will say I've kind of toyed with that thought in my mind a little bit.
I like it. You should have heard the podcast I did with Derek Witzke. I mean, we went down the rabbit hole for a good hour just on that subject alone. That they're coming.
There's some weird shit going on with the alien stuff, man.
Yeah.
Bob Lazar pulled their pants down, I believe.
Well, when the government says we have off-world vehicles and nobody even fucking bats an eye about it, it's like, are you not listening?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that kind of makes me question things too is like, what is the urgency of this information dump? For 50 years, it's been like hidden agenda, you know, so that's it. That could be part of the ploy to cause more confusion and chaos and whatnot. Or I just feel like 2021 and 2022 are going to be interesting.
Going to be lit.
Dude, do you see, honestly, and I respect your opinion a lot. I know we've kind of like established that you and I see the world a lot in similar hue. Do you actually see a way forward through all of this? That the United States of America comes out better? If you're getting down to brass tacks, man.
I think you're going to have to put out a leader. The presidency is not the all-powerful thing that people think it is, but I think you need someone who's going to inspire the nation. I would have, look, Barack Obama was just as big a scumbag as Bush or anyone else before him. He was killing people in the Mideast for no reason and, doing all these shady deals. But
failed to go to Chicago.
Yeah, right. He had that persona that I think he was a good speaker. He seemed like a guy you'd want to sit down and have dinner with. I think if you could get some kind of ticket where you had a guy like that with good intentions, it's the only way around it. And I tell you what, that Tulsi Jocko ticket, I keep coming back to that.
Sure.
I'm reading right now the Admiral McRaven book. William McRaven, he was a SEAL commander, and he's another guy who, man, just an inspiring book. And I think these guys, I think they feel like they're not important enough or not egotistical enough to want this job. But I just feel like we need to draft one of these guys. And I think there's enough normal people in the United States right now, whether you voted for Biden or voted for Trump. I think a guy like that could bring everybody to the table and say, hey, look, guys, we need to just have common sense solutions to these problems. I think Trump's agenda of draining the swamp and having an outsider come in and run things was the right agenda. It was just the wrong guy. He just didn't have the off switch that you talked about earlier that he needed to be able to just shut up. And he wasn't the right guy, but he had the right attitude. He had that right.
It's like what we talked about before. The execution didn't match the quality of the idea, you know? And I'll say this, we see it all the time in college football. You have an offensive coordinator who works his way up to head coach, and he's just not a head coach, phenomenal OC, but he's not an HC. And I think a lot of times it's about knowing your role. And I think that Trump could have been utilized as a powerful business ally to a cabinet. I think he could have done something in that realm very, very successfully. I think he would have been a tough negotiator at the negotiating table on a lot of things, but at the best outcome of it, I think he might have driven some goodness that would have been supported by both sides. But as the leader, he just fit this figurehead, this archetype of, if you want to, again, quote unquote, and I can't even believe I'm saying the words, toxic masculine, entitled white man. He fits the bill. He's an arrogant, rich old asshole, and he's cocky about it, But at the same time, I will say, I think he did a lot of shit that I hope history doesn't paint out the good that he did.
I think
that's true of any president. We'll
look back at it years later.
Bush has gotten some. I would say the tone of of his presidency has been more positive as time has gone on. I mean,
Yeah.
again, like you said, there is not a one of those guys or girls up there that I think are truly, truly looking at this from like, man, I just want to help America. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Right.
there might be a handful, you
Yeah.
know, 1% of the lot.
Yeah.
But I'm like you, man. I think we need to have people who aren't afraid to say what they're thinking,
Yeah.
and understand that when they say what they're thinking, that doesn't mean that what they're thinking is right. It just means that they're thinking.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, we're trying to, like, that's the way I am. I'm very, very open about the fact that I'm an idiot and stuff sounds great in my head until I say it
Sure.
out loud, you
Yeah.
know, and that happens when you call your spouse a bitch or whatever. Like, it sounded a lot better
Yeah.
in my head than when it came out. But
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
we need leaders who can communicate. God, we just beat that word to death, but they can articulate a thought, they can articulate an idea, and they can encourage critical thinking about things, and keep an idea of what the tone and the pulse of America is, and get the American to understand that, hey, listen, you have this wide expanse of opportunity and goodness. Every little peg ain't going to fit just right for
Right.
you.
Right.
We're trying to make the bigger puzzle come together, and it, instead of being like you know, an ultra realism, it's more like one of those etch a sketches, you know, like the edges have to be a little bit round sometimes, they
Right.
have to be a little bit out of focus. But I think, if you ask me, do I think we can get back to a place without some kind of cataclysm, bloodshed? It's scary, man,
Yeah.
if you really look at it. But I don't think the average person, the average good, hardworking, honest American that just wants to pay their bills, have a vacation, have a little money at Christmas time, raise their babies, I don't think they want war. I
Right.
certainly don't think they want war on their back doorstep. But at the same time, I do think that there are people that would become more active in a positive way. If things get worse, I think you'll see people start to bond together a little bit more. I've noticed the tone of conversations going a little bit more that direction. Now, keep in mind, I surround myself with, you know, ex-military, you know, very, you know, masculine type men, and then also the women that I'm around are just very successful go-getter type
Yeah.
people. So I would assume that those are the type of people who are going to have these conversations about, well, you know, I would protest, or I would go here, or I would stand for this, or I would do that, or, you know, it's not fun conversation. I definitely am not excited about the idea that we're having to talk about this, but it's real. And if you're not talking about these things, you're in denial. And that ain't
Yeah.
just
And
a
I think
river in Egypt.
the
You know?
majority of people, whether you voted for Biden or Trump, I think can come together. The vast majority of those people can come together on a series of issues. You know, if you just turned off the news, turned off your phone, and just sat down at a table, I think the majority of those people could come together. And I think that's what we need to realize, that the country is not these fringe lunatics on either side. It's the vast expanse of states in the middle of the country that can come together and make things right again. And they're still there. There's plenty of them.
Well, you know, it's like right now I'm sitting here I'm at a park. I've seen 3 people walking their dogs. I see 3 kids now playing. They're kind of circling around their parents who are jogging. Um, I mean, life is not immediately bad,
Right.
you know, and I think that, and I get the same way, man. I get to where I want to throw my phone. I want to slam on the gas. Like, it irritates me. Like,
Yeah.
if I stay in the news or on social media too long, I get sucked right into it, just like anybody.
Sure.
I'm not above it. So these kind of little moments right here where there's people walking around and the kids are smiling, mom and dad look like they're doing okay. Not necessarily saying that's everybody's story, but man, it's part of the story.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, that's something that's not making the headline news.
Yeah.
Family has a great day at the local park, you know, like,
Yeah.
but it's happening. It's happening right here in
Yeah.
front of us. And I think we just need more of that, the recognition of the good too.
Yeah. I mean, I run a gym with well over 100 members. They all voted different ways, but
Yeah.
everyone gets together. Everyone has a good time. Everyone, just trains and gets their work done.
life was a lot better when people didn't have to talk about politics all the time, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But I just think it's part of the culture that we're in. It's that
Yeah.
divisiveness driven stuff, you know?
But it's good that you talk about surrounding yourself with the right people, and I do the same thing and try. This is the greatest part about this podcast for me is I got to meet people like yourself, and I get to talk to Judd, and Derek Woodsky's a good example. I love Derek Woodsky, great
Yep.
guy, but we never would have had a sit down conversation, just in normal settings, and there's so many people out there that you get to meet. And well, so one of the guys we had in common was Terrence, and
Yep.
one of the biggest regrets I've had was I didn't get to talk to him in person.
Yeah.
And when we talked, we talked about his 20 his is it 20 for 20
2020 protocol. Yeah.
and for guys like us who've been around the block, the training, everyone has their own training. Everyone has their own things they're doing. It wasn't the
Yep.
training with that guy. He was on a different level. Spiritually, he was on a different level. The 20 for 20 with your non-negotiables every day.
Yep.
I took that, printed it out, put it up on the refrigerator at the gym. And just like, I sent it to my son. I sent it to Malcolm Majeski, who's the strength coach at Ashland. Like, look,
Yep.
it's so simple, but this is a guideline to live. And I had just started talking to him after we had talked.
Yep.
And he agreed to come on the podcast, and we were going back and forth, and then he passed, and it was brutal because we lost one of those incredible lights that could have done really good, and he was about ready to explode in popularity.
Yeah, he man, it left a hole in me. It was certainly somebody that I don't think I'd ever been more honest with another human being in my life, about every single thing. And I couldn't tell you why, other than the fact that he was equally as honest back.
Yeah.
And
your podcasts with him were fantastic.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I hope, obviously I look back at them and I'm like, man, maybe we should have taken this more serious, but that was us. That was the way that we talked when we talked. There was no fluff. There was no frills about it. It was just us. And the thing about his training, and that's the one thing that a lot of people say when they see it, is like, that's it. Like that's it. But it's the fact, it's never the miraculous stuff in life. It's never the big sweeping lottery ticket type deal. It's the stuff that's the repeating of the simple, basic, honest. It's just, if you go to the gym and you really give it your all for 45 minutes a day, I don't care if you do one exercise a day. You know what I mean? Like if you just go in there and you give yourself 45 minutes of hard effort, get to that point where your lungs are burning, the sinew is starting to feel like you feel the burn all through your body. And it's just, it's just something. Old guy here in a cowboy hat waving at me. But that's what his workouts were about, was to get the full body. Now his belief was the full body. I want to accent every single piece of my body. I want it to have been worked. I want it to have been stressed, and I want it to adapt. That was it. And, it took me, a year and some change training under him to allow myself to come back to the barbell. That was always our goal, was to get me back to a point where, okay, I can utilize the barbell as a tool, not as, like I said earlier, like a prison sentence. I was tortured by the way weight used to feel and what I used to be able to do.
Yeah.
Getting strong with an implement that I didn't really understand how strong worked. Like you pick up a 60-pound kettlebell and it's like, holy shit, this is not 60 pounds. You're wrong. You know what I mean? It's a different thing. So it allowed me to just redefine what strength is, because strength is not 800 pounds on a squat. 800 pounds on a squat might be the detriment of your life. It hurt me. It broke me down.
Yeah.
Would I have been better off, to have done this or that? Or you just have to go with what you want to do and be like the bumpers in bowling. Like
Yeah.
I should have scaled back. I should have lost weight. I should have trained different. All of those things haunted me. The what ifs, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and training under him, not having to think about training, not even comprehending how I'm getting stronger. I'm just getting stronger. I'm just
Yeah.
getting better. That was a great relief for me. And it was also proof, once again, you saw Terrence's program. There's no tricks. There's no
No.
twists or turns in there. It's straightforward meat and potatoes. And that's the thing. And it came in a simple text document. And I look at people, I've done it myself, these fancy multicolored Excel spreadsheets and these complicated, you make things complicated to make them complicated. You don't make them complicated because it's the best thing. Or I've done that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And or to maybe to appear to be smarter than I am, or cutesy. But his stuff was so straightforward. Even the getting up at 5 a.m., no alcohol, no pornography,
Yeah.
those kind of
Yep.
things. And those were issues. I actually personally don't look at pornography, not to say that I haven't, but I stopped somewhere along the line. But like I differed with him when I like alcohol and marijuana and things like that.
Right.
What I feel is, and I'll be very honest, during COVID, I have used alcohol and marijuana to enhance my life
Yeah.
greatly.
Yes.
And it's not escapism. I very much have used both for escapism in my life, to the point of like passing out, blacking out, whatever. This is more of a managed, okay, I'm cooking dinner, I'm having a glass of wine, got some people here eating dinner with me, and it's like, okay, let's have a beer with dinner and
Yeah.
let's sit around and talk by the fire and have another beer. Those 3 beers did not negate really anything that I did during the day. I worked really, really hard. I trained. I ate really well. I have the calories to absorb that. Now,
Yeah.
your Whoop band might fuss at you a little bit on your
Right.
sleep or something like that. But I can tell you this, some of the happiest days of my life and reoccurringly happy days happened during 2020. And not to say that evening wouldn't have been great without alcohol or without smoking a joint or a spliff or whatever, but it allowed me to say, like, I didn't remember that shit was going on. I
Yeah.
didn't remember that the world was
Yeah.
so messed up. I will never ever say that that's a bad thing, but I
No.
know that you have to stay on top of it. You really have to
Yeah.
stay on top of it.
There's something about, my wife comes home from work every night and it's cocktail hour and we'll have our
Sure.
cocktail and we'll talk about the day. And look, that
There's nothing better than that. There's
no,
nothing better than that.
and it's worth the little bit of maybe detriment to my training to have that moment where we can
Sure.
talk about that stuff. And that was his trip. And the training, I love the training. I think we both were into that style of training. Um, and I encourage people to go back and look through his old Instagram and look at some of the stuff because I mean you can't get anything better. Now I understand we're not training now to turn a caber or squat 800 pounds. We're training now
Right.
for life, and what better training program can you get than swinging kettlebells, doing lots of pull-ups and Hindu push-ups, and it just made you. It was so simplistic and so basic, but it was just perfect in
You know
that
what it is?
simplicity.
It was easy to keep with it because he was living proof of the result. The
Yes.
execution,
Yeah.
again, the execution
Yes.
matched the
Yeah.
quality of the idea, and he was living proof of that. And we all know, or anybody that paid any attention to him whatsoever, he was very open and honest about who he was, how he lived his life, the challenges he had. And I think when he spoke, there was such a conviction in the way that he spoke. And I'm like you, man. It's one of those people that I wish that the world could have interacted with him, not just find his
Yeah.
work and know who he was, but like really, really interacted with him. And I like finding artists like that, and at the same time, I hate it because
Yeah.
once you consume it, there's nothing more to consume, and
Yep.
it's hard. And I really do value Terrence very much as an artist. He was just a different kind of person, and I've gotten very close with his mother since his passing, and she, you know, is so appreciative of the people that continue his legacy, that hashtag the account and share it and buy his works. She said that people have, purchased a few or purchased the copies and then made, donations and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I've got some stuff coming up in the future with one of his training partners, Alex, who's a fantastic knife maker. Um, but what I'm doing there is we're going to do a couple raffles that pay homage to Terrence, and I think we're going to try to find either a little bit of a company, or not a company, but an organization over there for rescued pets, and also
Oh,
do something
yeah.
here, because he loved dogs so much.
Yeah.
He loved his dogs, and he was so heartbroken. I called his little dog Max Ewok, and he was so heartbroken when Ewok died. But to tell you the kind of person that Terrence was, if you don't know who he is, Terrence he said he did a fairly moderate microdose, or a fairly moderate mushroom dose, and he sat with Max by the ocean and watched the waves for like 3 hours. And, he could feel the labored breathing of the dog. And he really, he was like, I needed to let him know that I wasn't going anywhere. I would be with him, and he's like,
Yeah.
we like to have a grown man who's living his life recognize that an animal feels like that animal probably feels, oh, he's so busy. Like, I don't know how animals think, but like, he wanted to intentionally stop
Yeah.
and just sit with the animal, and then they had the vet come over and administer the shot and put him to rest, and it just, I'll never forget the phone call after that, because Terrence was so calm and clear about it, but he was also so sad. And just the way that he digested emotion was amazing. He really taught me a lot about life.
Yeah. He was, man, to see the outpouring when he passed, and to see for weeks. I mean, people talk about legacy now, and this person died and you forget about him the next day. But for weeks, and even now, still you're seeing the hashtags. But people were I did it myself, and I barely knew him. I knew him through Instagram
Yeah.
Messenger. But people just putting up pictures of this guy and still posting his thoughts and his words of wisdom. And I talked to a friend of mine, and I said, look, the way he died, with it being an accident and everything, it would almost have been better if he would have taken his own life, because then I could have gone, man, that guy was full of shit,
Yeah.
and I can let it all go. But he
Yeah.
was such a light, and he was so truthful and honest and true to himself, that it made it that much worse. That here was one good one that we lost.
Yeah. I mean, a guy that really lived that code and wanted to live that
Yes.
code.
Yeah.
That's what was so devastating for me. Is it's like, I have a strange relationship with suicide, because, like I told you before, I've kind of been at that door, and I know how it feels to feel hopeless.
Yeah.
But man, this was not a person who was hopeless. This was a
No.
person who was relentlessly hopeful. And not only that, he gave other people hope, and he didn't ask for anything. I mean,
Yep.
some of the stories that I got via DM, and what's crazy, it was 80% South Africans.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing about that is he knew that people loved him, and he knew that he had friends. But he said, I've made more ground in proving myself to Americans than I ever will to South Africans. And the fact is that I think they're just a very proud culture, and
Right.
they're not overly doting,
Mm-hmm.
but Americans tend to be.
Yep.
Americans tend to like sensationalize and glamorize.
Yep.
And I'm glad in many, many ways that he was wrong about that. Like,
Yeah.
I wish that he had known, but I'm glad he was wrong about
Yeah.
that. And just some of the things that they shared. Oh, Terrence was so kind. He did this. Terrence was so this, and he did, I mean, just wonderful, wonderful human. There was not a negative remark on there. There was not a negative comment.
Yeah. I don't know what anyone could have seen negative about it. He was a true warrior monk. He was a poet. He was an artist. He was a physical culture.
Yeah, man.
shooting star.
For sure. And that's the reality of it, man. Maybe it was just, I hope, like I said about everything that's happened, I hope it generates thought. I hope it does something. But somebody, and I think I'll speak highly of Guy, his brother.
Yes. Yeah.
I think in Terrence's passing, Guy has done an excellent job of maybe finding a little confidence in himself,
Yeah.
maybe finding a little bit more of a responsibility. Okay, my brother's not here, my mother is still alive, I'm the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm the man that
Yeah.
I need to be for this. And it just looks like to me that he's really stepped up and honored Terrence without capitalizing on Terrence, and really maintaining himself. And
Yeah.
that's what I would want. I would never ever want Guy or anyone to perceive Guy as Terrence or as Terrence's
No.
replacement, because Guy is his own individual.
Yeah.
And Terrence loved him so much and was hoping that he could find his voice, because he was like, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, I
He's
mean,
doing a great job. He's doing a great
yeah,
job with
it's
it.
just enough. It's
Yep.
not overdone. It's just enough to keep it alive. And if it goes an entirely different direction and it's honest, I don't think anybody will be. I mean, Guy can do whatever he wants, but I think he has such a respect for Terrence that it will always be done with respect.
Right. Yeah, it was great. I'm I miss him and I don't even really know him.
Yeah, yeah. I've missed him a lot this year. And it seemed like after his passing is when my head got a little scrambled, because he passed away right before the election,
Yeah.
and things have been crazy since then, holidays and all that stuff. So I'm at a place with it where I can talk about it and I'm really okay with it. But I do think I need to go back and revisit some stuff because there was so much happening.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I know that I tucked a lot of it away. So now's a good time. The years, I mean, the next 10 days are going to be nuts, but hopefully around February or something, we can start to get some slowdown and I can really give it the attention it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good.
So,
Well, man, I appreciate you doing this. Do you have anything you want to promote right now? I mean, anything going on that people need to know about? Podcast and
so I would say check out sorenex.com. We've always got some really cool stuff coming out. We've got new products. We've got restocks. Really take the opportunity to build your home gym with some of the best equipment in the world. I will say it's the best, but there's really great equipment out there by a lot of companies, but I stand behind Sorenex, the Peace, Love, and Meat page. I'm just trying to remove hurdles from people's lives. I don't know how to work out. Well, here's a workout. I don't know how to journal. Well, here's a journal entry. I don't know a recipe. Well, here's a recipe.
yeah.
Anything that I can organically share that I feel like might nudge somebody a little bit further down the line, that's what I'm looking to do. So really Sorenex, Peace, Love, and Meat, my own page, Brandon Lilly 3. That's anything I got going on, it'll be circulated there. So
Funny talking about Bert real quick is I hadn't talked to Bert in probably a decade. But I've seen all the stuff that's going on with what they're doing. And I think it was Christmas Day or maybe Christmas Eve. I sent him a text out of the blue. I didn't even know if I still had his right number. And I said, dude, I'm just proud of all the shit you've done. You've come such a long way, man. So it was just good to touch base with him. And then I sent him a picture a little bit later of Evan Marcus and I from the Cleveland Browns training together for December. So I sent him that too.
Man.
But it's really cool what they're doing.
Yeah. Bert's I know Bert is this is something that he's wanted because his dad was kind of the brains of the engineering side of it, and Bert has really come into his own as this networker, this finding the right pieces of the puzzle. So I'm glad that Bert is carving his own place instead of trying to be Richard, because Richard is Richard. We got a guy named Johnny that does a lot of our design stuff, and he's phenomenal. So Johnny is kind of the bridge between Bert's vision and Richard's ideas and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's simplifying all the process there because there's some amazing people around, but it's really cool to see Bert's vision unfolding.
It's very cool. I got to get down to Summer Strong next time they have it. And
yeah, dude.
And
we'll make sure that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, brother. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you doing this, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
absolutely. We got to get you on the Peace, Love, and Meat podcast too.
Anytime you want, I'd love to do it, man.
Thanks, brother.
All right, brother.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Bye.